All right, we're live now.
All right, welcome back, everyone.
Hello.
Hold on. We're testing it on his end to make sure it's working before we go full live.
Okay.
Full live.
Three-grid Zoom call here. Hold on.
Okay.
All right, hold on here. Okay. I see you all going. All right, on the handed site. Okay, so let me send you. That's your new YouTube link. I'm going to email it to you as well.
So is this, what do we do with this link then? What's that link for?
Okay, I emailed it.
What's that link for?
Savannah?
Christy, are we back live for real now?
Don't know, but you know, might as well have a cheer, right?
Cheers. Cheers to historic preservation.
Exactly.
Jeff, they're on live.
Okay. Well, welcome back, everybody, as you've been watching. We took a short intermission, and hopefully you're still with us and still engaged. And we've been chatting amongst ourselves and working on a few little technical glitches. As you all understand, this is new to us doing things this way, and we're doing the best we can. But here we are back now.
Yes, we are back. And so since we did have some technical difficulties, we want to go back to the beginning of our paddle raise. Okay, so maybe you were able to get online a little easier. Maybe you were to went to the kitchen and refreshed your drink, and you're thinking, you know what? I would really like to give $1,000 to Spokane Preservation Advocates. So we would so appreciate your donation of $1,000. So go ahead and give us that bid, $1,000. We are at 31% of our goal right now. So $3,125 raised out of our $10,000 goal. So if you would like to give us $1,000, we would so appreciate that. Go ahead and click that donate now button. So then our next amount, we are going to go to 500. So if you have it within your heart to give $500 to Spokane Preservation Advocates and just continue the work that they are doing and helping preserve Spokane's historic homes and parks and other history, go ahead and give us that donation of $500. Moving on now to $250. We are at the $250 range. I'm going to take a look here and try to get an update on where we are at. Let's see here. Coming to the paddle raise. And let's see. There we go. We are at the $250 range. So if you would like to give us $250, we so appreciate it. Thank you so much. So next, we are moving on to the $100 range. If you would like to donate $100, we would appreciate that. To Spokane Preservation Advocates, just click on that green donate now button for $100 and help us reach our $10,000 goal. Susanna, how are we doing? Any idea?
Well, I'm trying to look, and I can't see it on my screen right now, but I trust that you guys are being generous out there and that you're bidding and donating. And I did some quick math, though, and the last we saw, we were at a little over $3,000. So if we just had 7 people donate $1,000, we would reach our goal. So if you can be that person, one of those people to donate that much, we sure would appreciate it. But as Christy said, there are other levels that you can donate by just logging onto your phone and clicking on that bid at $500, $250, $100, or $50. And again, we appreciate every dollar that we get to preserve the history of Spokane. So
Right,
thank
so
you for participating in it.
Yeah, and thank you, Susanna. And $50, let's go ahead and go for that $50 right now. Please hit that donate button for $50. It's super easy. We just appreciate all your support. And thank you so much for giving tonight. And the paddle raise, that will be open as long as we are alive. So continue to give throughout the evening. Susanna.
Yes, correct. And we are going to try to update you on that. And so thank you again for continuing to bid. As we said, every single donation does help. Well, now we're going to move along tonight, and I want to visit with Karen Dorn-Steele. Karen is our current advocacy chair, and she's going to share about a very, very important issue in Spokane that is going on right now as we speak. Karen.
Good evening. I'm Karen Dorn-Steele. We're pleased, very pleased, that the Washington Trust for Historic Preservation recently accepted our nomination to place Spokane's historic Chancery Building on its list of the state's most endangered places. The listing was announced September 10th in a virtual event from Seattle. Our intention in seeking this listing is to encourage the Chancery's owners to repurpose the 1910 building instead of demolishing it for new construction. SPA leaders grew concerned about the building's future after a meeting last fall with owner Betsy Coles, who said it was unlikely to survive a redesign of the entire block bounded by Monroe, Riverside, Madison, and Sprague. The building was designed in 1910 by a famous architect, Kirtland Cutter, for an insurance company, and then was expanded and redesigned in 1924 by another noted architect, Gustav Persson. It was purchased by the Catholic Diocese of Spokane in 1966, and it was sold to the Coles family in 2006. It is a significant anchor building in the West Riverside Avenue Historic District, which has been a National Historic District since 1976 and is often described as Spokane's most beautiful street. The SBA advocacy team has reached out to most of the district's property owners. A majority strongly oppose demolishing the Chancery. SPA will continue to talk with property owners who are seeking more protection for their neighborhood and consult also with the owners on creative alternatives to demolition.
Hey, thank you, Karen, for that. And if you've driven by that building, it is a gorgeous building. I've had the privilege of being inside it. And so it is really important that we assist in saving this wonderful part of Spokane history. So thank you for sharing that with us. Also, did you know that there are benefits to listing your property on the local register of historic properties? Logan Camporeale from the Historic Preservation Office now shows us a video about all of those benefits from simply listing on the local register.
Hello, my name is Logan Camporeale, and I'm a historic preservation specialist at the Spokane Historic Preservation Office in Spokane City Hall. Today we're standing on 11th and Adams in hopefully the future Cannon Streetcar Suburb Historic District. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the benefits of listing your home or a district on the Spokane Register of Historic Places. One of the first benefits that I like to think is the most important benefit of listing on the Spokane Register is the stewardship aspect. Say this was your home here and you were really proud of it, put a lot of money into restoring it, rehabilitating it. And so listing your home on the Spokane Register of Historic Places can help to ensure that future owners do that same stewardship to the property that you love so much. The second great benefit of listing your home on the Spokane Register of Historic Places is it makes you eligible, or makes your property eligible for some important benefits, some financial incentives. And those incentives aren't generally available to you if you list your home on the National Register of Historic Places. So it's really something specific for the Spokane Register of Historic Places. If you do list your home, you go through the process, you get that history, it comes before the Landmarks Commission and your home gets listed, then it would be eligible for the Special Valuation Tax Incentive. So let's use the same example we were using before with the Moy House. Moy House was built in 1908 and it was built by a man named Albion McLaughlin. Unfortunately, we don't know the architect, but when the current owners took possession of it in 2018, they felt like it needed some rehabilitation, and it probably did. It needed some new paint on the outside. It needed some more modern appliances or conveniences like air conditioning and a new furnace. The owners also wanted a modern kitchen, and so they put quite a bit of money into the home. And back in the 80s, that same process was going on, and when it happened to a state lawmaker, he realized that his taxes went up a lot. He bought a historic home, he put a bunch of money into the property, and his property taxes went up. And he was frustrated by that process. And so he brought something to the state legislature to say, hey, when you put a bunch of money into a historic home, you should be able to sort of remove the money you put into your home from your assessed value for a certain period of time. So in Washington State, you can remove the amount that you put into your home for 10 years from your assessed value. So let's use some really easy numbers because I'm not good at math. I'm a historian, but I can do easy numbers. So let's say that this house was assessed at $200,000. It's probably more, but again, easy numbers. So it was assessed at $200,000 in 2018. If you spent 25% of the value of the home to do your upgrades, not just things on the outside. Things on the outside will need to be reviewed by the Landmarks Commission because the home is listed. So if you want to, add an addition to the back, that's something that would need to be reviewed. But most of the things that you're going to be doing are going to be on the inside. And we don't care what you do on the inside at the Historic Preservation Office, but that money still counts towards your special valuation tax incentive. So let's say what you need to spend is at least 25% of the assessed value. So like I said, $200,000, you would need to spend $50,000 in a 2-year period or 25-month period. And as long as you could spend that threshold amount, we would work with you to look at your costs, to collect your invoices, and we'll work with the county assessor to remove whatever that amount is from your assessed value for the next 10 years. So let's say it was $200,000. Let's say it goes up $10,000 the next year. You spent $50,000. You'll be assessed on $160,000. But it'll reduce the amount that you're paying in property taxes each year. Basically, for every $100,000 that you spend on rehabilitation, you'll save about $1,100 a year in taxes for 10 years. And after 10 years, it falls off. You're not limited to just once. Say you need to do 3 phases of your project. You're like, 2 years, I can only save so much money. Like, I want to do a bunch of phases. And we've had some folks who are on their 3rd phase. And their 3rd one is about to fall off right now. It's from when they first moved into their home, and they just continue going, continue taking on new projects. Once your home is listed on the register, you're eligible to apply for some grant opportunities that we have. One of them is called the Facade Improvement Grant. And it can be used for any improvements that you want to do to your street-facing facade. And any improvements you want to do, say it's repainting, if you need to do some repointing on your masonry, if you needed to do you had one bad window that was replaced with a vinyl window, and you needed to get that replaced back to an appropriate wood window, those sorts of things would all be appropriate to apply for our Facade Improvement Grant. And we have 3 grants that are working on this year, so we'll see how those come to fruition. And one last benefit of listing on the Spokane Register of Historic Places is that you get your beautiful bronze plaque. People are really excited about this moment, and it's sort of like a rite of passage when you come down and you pick up your plaque and come home and sort of christen your home as a member of the Spokane Register of Historic Places.
That's awesome. I love those plaques.
Christy,
they're always something that, if you're walking.
They're very cool, aren't they?
You can, stop and admire the house that has that up on by their door or something. Yeah, awesome. A lot of benefits. I really had no idea how many benefits there were to listing on the Spokane Historic Register. SGA does have a heritage grant that provides $750 to homeowners toward the cost of a nomination. to list their home on the local register. So that's one of the things that SBA does for historic home owners. And you can learn more about that and what Logan was talking about on SBA's website.
That is correct. And listing your home on that local register, well, it does require a little bit of research. But even if you're not planning to list your home, I think it'd be kind of fun to learn about your home's history. So you're probably sitting there going, well, how do you do that? I'm glad you asked, because Reva Dean, who is the head librarian of the Northwest Room of the Spokane Public Library, has put together 2 fantastic videos. The first is general information on researching, and the second one gets into very specific research options for Spokane properties. Reva shows you exactly how to use the library portal to find information on your property. It's really easy. You can find these videos that are posted on our website, or if you don't want to go through our website, you can go to the Spokane Public Library YouTube channel, and you will find those wonderful resources from Reva. And Chrissy, I think I'll be doing that very soon. I live in a 1941 home, and I've often wondered about the history of it because it's a unique house, and I would love to know more about it. So I'm going to get on that research, maybe even tomorrow.
Yeah, good idea. I know a lot of the homes in Spokane have, a lot of their history was lost in the big fire, like some of the early homes. But it's important to, check, like you were saying with Reva, and see if you can do some cool research. That's awesome. Well, now we have a short video with Spokane's Historic Preservation Officer. She works for the city. This is Megan Duvall, talking about the formation and the advantages of some local historic districts in Spokane.
Hi, I'm Megan Duvall, Historic Preservation Officer for the City and County of Spokane. We cover both the city as well as unincorporated Spokane County when we list historic properties. And today I'm actually in the Cannon Streetcar Suburb Historic District. It's a proposed district that we're working on right now that includes over 500 properties in the Lower South Hill neighborhood. So how do you create a historic district in Spokane? Once that nomination document is completed and the design standards and guidelines are put together, then it goes in front of the Spokane Historic Landmarks Commission. They review those draft documents, and then we send out ballots to all property owners within the boundaries of the district. We have to have 50% plus 1 of the property owners to create a historic district. They have to vote yes. We start in the hole with 500 no votes and have to climb our way out, 1 yes vote at a time. So what does it take to get a historic district passed in Spokane? The first thing is we have to have a super engaged advocacy group or proponent of the district nomination. So banding together with your neighbors, coming to me through your neighborhood council at the Historic Preservation Office and telling us, hey, we really want some extra protections for our neighborhood, for our historic resources that we have. So what does it mean if you actually own a house in a historic district? Well, there's a lot of really great incentives we have that we can offer you if you invest in your property. We have property tax reduction. We have a facade improvement grant program. But the other thing is just think about where you live in your neighborhood and what's important to you about your neighborhood. That's what we're here to help you protect. That sense of place, the reason you bought your house in your neighborhood, the trees, the streets, the feel of the place where you live. So what does it mean for you as a property owner? What do we look at? What do we actually review? Who's going to tell you what you can and can't do with your property? Well, actually, the reality is we only really look at the street-facing facades of properties. The interior is yours to do whatever you'd like with. Incentives actually apply to those interior features, but we are just looking at changes that you're making to the historic character-defining features of the building. The other thing that we can do is we also will look at demolitions within the neighborhood. That's always a hot-button issue. We actually have the ability in Spokane to say no to a demolition of an incredibly important historic resource. Finally, we're looking at new construction within a historic district. That's another thing that tends to get neighbors a little bit concerned. Now you actually have a group, the Historic Preservation Commission, that can look at those new properties, if they're compatible, how they fit in with the neighborhood, so they're not a detriment to your neighborhood. In Spokane, we actually have several local historic districts. Some of them are quite small. We're standing in Boog's Edition Historic District, which is made up of just 4 houses. There's another just down the road, that's the Shadle Comstock houses. That's another 4 resident historic district. Then we have the Hilliard commercial area, which is about 12 historic properties. And the Corbin Park Historic District, which was listed all the way back in the 1990s and has 80 properties that ring the park. Last year in 2019, we were able to create a really large historic district in Brown's Addition that includes almost 300 properties. And creating historic districts is not an easy task to do. So we really rely on our nonprofit partner, the Spokane Preservation Advocates, who partnered with the Brown's Addition Neighborhood Council to knock on doors and make phone calls and help get the ballots returned to our office so that we could move it forward and actually have that district created. Thank you to SPA for giving me the opportunity to talk today, as well as helping with advocacy of historic preservation in Spokane. We really couldn't do it without you.
Thanks. Thanks, Megan. I just wanted to say how SPA's advocacy team worked closely with the Brown's Addition Neighborhood Council for almost a year. We attended their meetings. We also helped them to identify a long list of absentee owners from Southern California to Hawaii, whom we contacted and urged them to vote yes on the local historic district. And that successful vote was a huge win for historic preservation in Spokane.
That's great to know. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Karen, I know you worked really hard on that, and thank you so much. You and the whole advocacy committee worked really, really hard. So SBA has a fund to help support the formation of some new local historic districts, like you just heard about, because of the protection that it offers to the neighborhoods and the irreplaceable historic resources. And you can contribute to the fund by purchasing pieces of those puzzles that you heard Susanna talk about a little bit earlier, that they're going to form a picture of the West Riverside Historic District in the auction. So you can buy those puzzle pieces, and we appreciate that.
All right, thank you, Christy. And I want to update us because we do have an update as we try to reach that $10,000 today. We are now at $4,325. So thank you to all of you continuing to bid with your paddles. You can continue to do that throughout this live stream tonight. Okay, now jumping on to historic districts. We know they're predominantly populated by historic homes. There's always the need, though, for new construction in any neighborhood. And making the new blend with the old requires, well, attention to a few basic ideas. It does sound a bit tricky, doesn't it? Well, there are ways to get it right. And our local preservation expert, Betsy Bradley, is joining us this evening, and she's going to share with us a little bit about that. And afterwards, we'll interact and take some questions and answers.
Betsy's mic.
I'm here. Let's move on. I've just unmuted myself. I think that's a good idea. Okay, so compatibility is the byword that we use when we're thinking about what is a good addition in a historic district. And this array of apples here shows how compatibility works in the fruit world. You can't compare apples to oranges, but you can see there's a lot of variety in the compatibility of these apples. In the same way, the street shot of Pacific Avenue in Brown's Addition reminds us how this small brick apartment building can be compatible with the wood frame single family home right next door. They're a similar scale, they just seem to fit together. So we have two main choices for how to design new buildings in historic districts. And these buildings are not in Spokane. They're kind of dropped in from outer space, so we can think about them without thinking about Spokane. The one approach is replicating a building's type and style, like we see on the left. And the other one is to use contemporary design, but to work hard to make sure it's compatible in the historic district setting. So compatibility with neighbors and in the streetscape is also important. And we look at things like the distance from the sidewalk or setback. And you can see that's similar here for these three buildings. We look at the scale, overall size of the building and height. We want these to be similar, but not matching. And then the roof line shape and the other things come into play. And also it's important to know the location of the driveway and the garage. If there's no garages visible in the historic district, you probably don't want to have a garage out front. So here's another example from out of town. These two bungalows are side by side in Sheridan, Wyoming. You can see the new bungalow is on the left, the red one, and it does have a garage that we see from the street. But other than that, the scale of the two residential buildings are pretty similar. They both have a front porch. They have similar pitch roofs, and they're pretty good neighbors, both drawing on that bungalow for inspiration. So moving along, so there you might just ask, why don't we just build historic looking buildings in historic districts? Well, there's quite a bit of challenge to get a replica design to look quite right in a streetscape. Often it doesn't quite fit, it's slightly too small, the floor heights are off. And I'm browsing around for an example. I found this one on the right with its own caption that captures it all. It almost looks like the real thing, but it doesn't. So that's why I think it's important that we also look at compatible contemporary design. Here's an example from Salt Lake City, and you can see it has similar level of detail. And if we compare it, we see the older building on the right side. They both have some brick on the facades. They both have a porch-like feature, but there are some clear differences, and the new building appears to be contemporary in design. So what are we thinking here in Spokane? I'm one of the members of the Landmarks Commission, and we don't review a lot of new construction, but we've talked about this topic. And we think that some clear visual reference to historic buildings is a good starting point. But then there's a range of solutions, more traditional, like we see here on the top, or more contemporary, as the bottom building depicts. What I noticed in Spokane is the variety of buildings in our older neighborhoods, as buildings were added over decades. This variety allows us to focus on streetscape elements and to allow for a range of design solutions that maintain compatibility. So we don't really have to look to replica designs. It's also important to remember that you can love historic buildings and appreciate contemporary design. So this is one of my favorite infill buildings. It's in Philadelphia. Yeah, it breaks a lot of rules when you think about how the corner building there compares to a historic district. But to me, the quality of the materials, the attention to detail in the design, yes, there's even a garage door, but it seems to hold that corner with a curved corner just right. And we do want to balance the dynamic urban character of our historic districts, even residential ones, with this sense of continuity and tempered change. So there's a fine line to meet there. But I think we can think carefully about the new additions to our historic district and have some good solutions here in Spokane.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Betsy, for that. And I guess what I'm hearing from you is that compatible infill doesn't have to be historic to be appropriate. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, and I think it's important to not try to match too closely because of the cost. And we can't really match the cost of those fine building materials that we used in the past. So color matters, materials do matter, but they don't have to match.
Okay, and so let me throw this out to you. Let's say I'm a person who owns a piece of property and I'm thinking about building in a historic neighborhood. What is the first step that I should take if I want to move towards this and fitting into the neighborhood with the style that I have?
Well, first you need to study the neighborhood around that building site. Look at the types of buildings that are there, their height, their materials. and think about how a new building could add to that ensemble or collection of buildings and either stand out too much or not really hold its spot in the streetscape. So it's thinking about being a good neighbor in building design as well as how we treat our neighbors person to person.
And Betsy, we have so many historic neighborhoods in Spokane. Is there an example that stands out to you of where we can readily see this?
Well,
where something old mixes with new so well?
Near where I live on, facing Cannon Hill Park, the long boundary of the park, there is a building that's been there for a few decades. It's very mid-century modern, almost contemporary in design. And that's a building that draws on contrast with the surrounding buildings. Further down to the south, there's a building that has been expanded and remodeled recently. So it has a much more contemporary look. And if you don't think about what that building looked like before the project, you can see the sense of, yes, it is similar scale to the flanking buildings, but it has much more contemporary feeling. But it, I think, fits in quite well. So you have two examples there to ponder as you walk around the park. And I encourage everybody to walk and look and think and, avoid the sort of thinking as, oh my gosh, that's new, but just like, oh, look, that's a little variety in the streetscape.
Yes, that's good. There's a couple new houses in my neighborhood that have gone up over the years. And I'm always amazed because when they first start working on them, I think, ooh, and then once they're there, and they meet all the requirements that you just talked about, they do seem to fit into the neighborhood and just make a wonderful addition. So thank you for enlightening us, Betsy, on compatible infill, something to impress your friends with, Christy.
Yes. I'm just glad we have people like Betsy who are passionate about this, and they can kind of explain it a little bit better.
Yes.
And that, it sounds like, Betsy, that you have a pretty open mind too about what can happen, and I like that.
Well, yes, I moved on that scale from to embrace the different designs, and I encourage everybody else to do that as well.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you joining us. Thanks, Betsy.
You're welcome.
All right, so let's see if we can get an update. I'm gonna look over this way, this way to see if we have an update on our paddle raise numbers. We were getting close to 50% of our goal. So please hit those donation buttons. It doesn't matter if you're giving, $50 or $100, $250, whatever you can do. Just hit that donation button. And I also noticed that a lot of the for the cork polls, I almost called it a pork.
Pork poll.
Yeah. The cork poll, those are almost gone, and those are $25 for those. So those are popular. So anyways, let's see if we have an update. We do not, but at last check, we were at a little over $4,300. So thank you so much.
That is fantastic. You guys have done a great job tonight and hung with us and participated, and we hope you will keep doing so. Finally, we wanted to share some of the things that SBA has accomplished since the last auction fundraiser, which was held, if you can believe it, it seems so long ago, March of 2019. That night, we raised $23,000 for preservation. And then in April, through our Heritage Fund Grants program, we awarded a $3,500 grant to the German American Society, and then a $5,000 grant to Westminster Congregational Church for roof repair, and then also a $5,000 grant to St. Mark's Church. That money went to replace the pipe organ inside the church. Christy?
Yeah, then throughout the summertime, we advocated to save some endangered historic homes in the West Central neighborhood.
And then the September 2019 annual tour of historic homes featured several historic homes in the West Central neighborhood. That tour raised $4,000 for preservation.
All right. And then in October, through our Heritage Fund grants, we awarded $5,000 to the MAC to restore some of the original Campbell House furniture, and $5,000 to the Cheney Depot to help relocate and restore the historic depot. We also hosted a fabulous party at the Flour Mill Loft, which is a new event venue.
Yes, a very, very cool space that is. And then it takes us to March of 2020. And of course, we all know what happened then. Our event was canceled, sadly, at that time. And until this evening, all of our events had been canceled. It's been a long couple of months, but that doesn't mean that we haven't been working towards preservation. Throughout the summer, we worked to save the Chancery Building, as you heard earlier from Karen, as well as support efforts to create a historic district in the West Riverside neighborhood. So a very, very busy time, despite a pandemic, despite being shut down. SPA continues to do great work in our community for historical preservation.
That's right. And the advocacy continues for the Jensen Bird building. They are pursuing talks with WSU regarding the local architectural treasure, Jensen Bird. We hope to continue to support preservation in our community. So please help us do so. We are at about half of our goal for tonight. So we are at about $5,000 of our $10,000 goal. So please hit that donation button, make those bids on the silent auction items. We need your help tonight to get to that $10,000 goal. So raise your paddle. We appreciate all of your help tonight. The silent auction is actually going to remain open until October 23rd, the morning of October 23rd. So you can still bid on the silent auction items, but right now we only have a couple of more minutes for that paddle raise. So please give big, hit that green donate now button. We appreciate your help. Susanna?
All right. Well, you know, this has been quite an evening for us so far. And, you know, Christy and I have really enjoyed being with you. And I feel before we toss it to Paul to kind of close us out, we should do another cheers for Spokane Preservation Advocates and all the fine work that they've done in our community. And for those of you who joined us this evening and who've been so generous in the past and tonight, thank you very, very much. Paul?
Thank you. Paul?
Thanks to all of you for joining in our 2020 virtual auction. I know we all miss being together in person for this event. We preservationists are passionate in our beliefs, but we are also practical. So we work for the cause in the best way we can. And that means going virtual tonight. Great thanks to those who planned and produced this evening, especially Teresa Schmautz, Jeff Morgan, and of course, Dave Shockley. Ultimately, preservation is all about the people behind it. The people who believe in it, who write about it and teach it and work for it, who come together to celebrate the successes and mourn the losses. The people who make up SPA are its strength. We share a sense of place that links us together, that provides a richness to our own individual journeys and underlies the vision that each of us has for the future. Those connections are meaningful to us all, even in a socially distant world. Thank you for being here tonight to maintain your preservation connection and to see that the work goes on. When we gather again in person, and we will, that night will be all the sweeter. Thank you for attending, and good night.